The last few months were very difficult for all of us because, we left the Middle East with a lot of propaganda behind us, and we come here and we find that that propaganda is alive and well. On October 7th, 39 innocent Israeli children were killed. It was a terrible atrocity, there is no excuse for that, but that does not justify killing 13,000 Palestinian children. The math doesn't add up. I mean, we talked before about the exchange rate, but dude, 39 to 13,000? That is worse than the exchange rate in Lebanon. But they always come up with something. We are sorry for killing babies, but they were human shields. And people are like, oh, okay. I mean, really? Does this make any sense? Does that mean that the 13,000 babies have 13,000 military targets hiding in their diapers? I mean, because I know, because a baby's diaper is full of shit, for me, I don't think it's an existential threat to Israel. So to justify, they lie, and they lie about decapitated babies, and so people would turn a blind eye about the daily genocide. They spread the lies about systemic sexual violence, a lie that has been refuted many times by Israeli sources themselves. And when they were exposed, the New York Times went ahead and took one for the team and wrote the worst piece of dictated propaganda in history. It's not the first time that the New York Times does that, by the way. In the past, they were the mouthpiece of George W. Bush, spreading lies about the WMDs in Iraq. And I tell you, like a mouthpiece, like a publication being a mouthpiece for the president, that is something we Arabs are used to. But 20 years later, they become a mouthpiece for a foreign country, a client country, a country that we sponsor. And when that story got debunked, they pressured the UN to send a non-expert Pramila Patton, who wrote a bullshit report based on testimonies from representatives from IDF and Zaka. By the way, Zaka were called lying many times while collecting millions of dollars of tax-exempt donations. Even the Nigerian prince is taking notes. And by the way, Ms. Patton did mention in the report that she was not qualified and there was no forensic evidence. And that everything that she wrote was based on interviews with Israeli officials and hand-picked witnesses with questionable credibility. There was no independent UN investigation allowed because, as we know, the only other thing that Israel loves other than stealing land is shitting on the UN. And yet, thank you. And yet, the misleading title of the report was the only thing shared on mainstream media, like the BBC, CNN, and of course, the New York Times. But I don't blame Israel. They do what many other countries do. They lie. But what about the mainstream media? Those who should hold people in power accountable and expose the lies. They didn't even bother to translate Israeli media refuting those lies. Can you imagine I, an Arab, using Israeli media to prove my point? BBC, CNN, Sky News, Fox News, MSNBC, the New York Times, they ran with the most extreme stories of rape and kids put in ovens and fetuses taken out of mothers' wombs. And none of them apologized for that, and with even like Israeli media refuting these lies. They didn't even bother to report it. And now they are sharing the headlines of a very misleading report, and they know it, because it doesn't matter what it says. What matters is the headline. No one has time to read. The damage has been done. And this is why I'm taking up time to talk about this in this non-key ceremony, because there's no key out. So I'm filling the time. Yeah, where's my key?